The sea smelled of coins and old thunder beneath the rock. It pressed up from the caverns and the broken-toothed caves, from the salt-slick ladders where boys once dared each other lower and lower with a lantern in their teeth. Jaime had been one of those boys, golden, reckless, hateful of the dark and chasing it anyway. He remembered the lantern quivering in his hand as much as the tremor in his breath. The sound of the waves then had been laughter trying to frighten him away. Tonight the same water made no such pretense. It wore a grave voice and kept its counsel. He rode down through Lannisport at dusk, with only Bronn and a dozen men he trusted to keep their mouths shut. The wind plucked at his white cloak, stained from road and rain and the fugitive ash of a city he could not unsee when he closed his eyes. The September of Baelor had been a crown of smoke, his sister a black star in its ruins, and Jaime, who had killed a king to save a city, found himself unmade by the sight of the one he wanted to love more than vows and breath. The streets of the port were busy, but quieter than he remembered. Nets were being drawn in without songs, and the fishwives hawked in voices clipped thin by war. A boy ran with a kite made from a rag of crimson cloth, its tail stitched with shells. It rose, fluttered, fell, rose again. The boy laughed when it rose, cursed when it dropped. The wind did not care. "Smells like a whore's purse," Bronn said, nose wrinkling. "Coin and sweat." "It smells like home," said Jaime, though he had doubted, for days and then for years, whether he had a home at all that did not exist only as a tale he was told as a lad, in his father's voice, in Tyrion's laughter. He touched the gold that capped his ruined wrist and felt the old familiar surge of contempt and something that tasted like gratitude to the gods for having left him at least this reminder. The hand had taught him more than a dozen masters at arms. They climbed the road the color of old bone toward the great lion's mouth of the gate. The rock reared out of the coastline like a beast that had decided to be a mountain and succeeded. Evening set its face in bronze. The cliff windows took the light and made it coin. Sentinels watched their approach from between lids of carved granite. A horn sounded once, twice. The portcullis lifted slow, teeth clacking against teeth. Captain of the gate was Ser Forley Prester, whose face had always looked as if it were laboring to recall a joke that refused to be summoned. He bowed without grace and led them into the stone throat of the passage. Torches licked the damp. Old grooves in the paving stones remembered wagons of or in barrels of wine. "Your lordship," Prester said carefully. He took Jaime's measure without lingering on the gold. "Not that today," Jaime answered. "Not ever, if vows mean what they should." "You're in white," Bronn said cheerfully, "until you decide otherwise. Never thought much of vows myself. Men keep the ones that fit." Prester's eyes flicked to Bronn with disfavor and back to Jaime. "Your father used to say the same, M-Lord, that oaths are best chosen like boots. He thought little of men who swore what they could not walk in. My father would have me in his boots whether they fit or not." Jaime smiled without showing teeth. "He is past telling me so. Where is Davin?" "In the Westvale Tower. He rides back from Crakehall with 200. Tomorrow at noon, the steward says. We kept the walls thicker because the times ask it." "Good." Jaime handed his reins to a groom whose eyes were half night, half hope. "Send my compliments to Ser Adam Marbrand. Tell him to meet me in my father's solar." "No, in the solar that used to be my father's. It belongs to no one I will name aloud. It belongs to the rock." Prester hesitated. "Shall I have the Red Cloaks informed, my?" "Tell the Red Cloaks nothing yet. Not until I tell them myself." He found the rooms as unchanged as a wound that refuses to scab. The desk with its stone lion feet knew the weight of Tywin's hands. The hearth was blackened where a log had once spit and crackled and made his father set down his quill with a sound like a nail tapping a bone. The long window opened only on the sea, not on any memory that was not the sea's, and Jaime stood with his palms on the sill and breathed the wet breath of it until his pulse slow-walked into something that felt like decision instead of fleeing. A raven perched on the iron stand, clever eyes reflecting the lantern. The bird had flown with the last letter he would ever write to his sister when he still thought a letter might matter. Jaime set a fresh scroll on the table, crushed a stick of wax in the candle flame, pressed the Lannister seal slowly, and then turned it to ash in the same candle while the wax was still soft. He had no right to the lion. He would earn or abandon it, but he would not steal it from a corpse or a crown. When Adam Marbrand came, he brought a bottle that smelled like a meadow in summer. They drank without talking. The wine ran to the tongue like an apology and left behind a story that had not been asked for. "You left," Adam said at last, after the second cup and before the third. "The city waits to see who is left to make it answer for the dead." "I expected you to be there, Jaime." "She is there," Jaime said. He did not say her name. The window took the words and salted them. "I have done enough for kings and for queens. I have come to do something for my brother." Adam's hand tightened around the cup till it flexed. A rivulet of wine spilled over his fingers and ran to the table in a thin red line. "Cersei has put a price on his head that would feed the West for a winter. The gold cloaks hunt him in alleys. The city whispers of dwarfs like they whisper of rats. Do you know where he is? If I did, would I tell even you?" Adam's mouth turned down. "I hope you would tell me as a friend, so I might advise you not to speak it aloud again once you had told me. There's a kind of knowing that kills the man who knows." "Then let me be killed for it," Jaime said, and was startled to hear that he meant it. "I have done worse to live." They sat in the old silence. It had the smell of parchment and a man too disciplined to sweat. Adam played at scowling and then let it go. "Tell me what you are going to do, then." Jaime moved his gold hand across the desk, slow enough to hear the faint scrape of its joints. "I am going to give away the rock." Adam did not laugh. He seemed to lose height without moving. "To whom?" "To those who will spare Lannisport and the miners and every boy who thinks to be a hero when the horns blow. To the woman my brother has grown to serve, if the tales are true. The dragons cross and all the kingdoms break into pieces underfoot. Cersei thinks to be a heel enough to pin them. She will grind men into the dirt to make herself a stone that cannot be moved. I will not be her weight." Adam set the cup down with ceremony, as if it might explode. "You have the keys to the sea doors and the posterns, perhaps. You have the name that makes men lower their spears. But you do not have the right." "No," Jaime said. "I have the wrong. I have enough of it to do what must be done. You cannot simply hand our home to foreigners." "Foreigners." Jaime tested the word. It sounded to him like a shield raised too late. "Our house has made foreigners of our own blood. Tyrion was foreign to my father because he came stranger-shaped. I was foreign to my vows because I was born a lord's son. We have a talent for driving out what we ought to keep. I will invite in what may save us from ourselves. Daenerys Targaryen. If she is what I hope, yes. And if she is what your father thought of her kind, then I have misjudged and I deserve my failures. Lannisport deserves the chance I can make for it. The West deserves a lie less poisonous than the one my sister tells in daylight with the same mouth she kisses my brow." The room was very quiet. The sea gnawed and breathed. The raven clicked in its throat. "Jaime," said Adam. It was almost a prayer or a hand extended over ice. "You're asking me to choose with you, against the girl who sits the chair with no pity left in her bones, or to refuse and leave you against her alone. I do not love your sister, but I love the men who will die if we pretend honor is the best spear against dragons." Jaime finished for him. "Yes, I am asking. If you cannot, then take a horse east. Take as many as will follow you. Say you sought me and did not find me. Say I had gone to sea to drown. Do not let me drown you." Adam stood. He drank his third cup and set it down empty with more care than he had set the second. He looked at the gold hand because it was easier than the face. "Sir Jaime, once outside the walls of Golden Tooth, I asked you what made a man brave. You told me that the day would come when I would stop asking the wrong men. I was a fool. You were. But sometimes fools end wars by beginning them differently." He bowed old friend to old friend. "If you do this, you will be named traitor by noon and savior by supper time, and both names will be wrong. I will carry garrison orders at dawn. I will tell Prester to keep his men in the inner ward and leave the sea doors closed but unbarred. Adam, do not thank me. It will sound like a farewell, and I'm not ready. In the night that followed, Jaime wrote 2 letters. One he burned after his flesh hand, faltered over the name and could not be made to complete the salutation. The other he sent with a man Bronn named with a word from the stepstones and a grin. He's carried larger things for smaller pay, Bronn said. I'll tell him the coin is in his future and the future will be short if he's slow. Tell him to find the eunuch, Jaime said. If the spider still weaves, he will know how to lead a fly to the queen without the fly being eaten. Tell the man to ask for the dwarf's ear. He will hear a voice he knows. You're banking on your brother hearing anything but his own wit. Bronn leaned in the door with his usual insolence worn like a shirt that fit everyone. I've marched a lot of roads for your gold, sir. This one smells like a cliff edge. You can ride east with Adam. I can. Bronn examined his fingernails. But I'm curious how much you'd pay to keep me where the wine is better. Enough to insult you, said Jaime, and slid him a purse with a weight that made the light wobble. Bronn caught it without looking. I do like it when a Lannister pays his debts, he said. Don't you? The dawn that lifted over the bay made the rock look as if it contained fire. In the courts, men drilled with a half-hearted vigor that felt like whistling in a graveyard. Smiths hammered and did not sing. Jaime walked the inner wards until the distance began to feel like a companion and not a sentence. He wore the white cloak and no sigil. Men watched him, some with the old bright loyalty, more with questions that had no place on their tongues. Word traveled faster than ravens, but it did not travel in a straight line. It hit walls, changed, came back. He led it. At noon, the wing of the horizon darkened. A stain moved across the water like an idea. Bronn counted ships under his breath in a child's rhyme that named useless kings. The sails were black and clean. The bows were carved with dragons that did not roar until the sea delivered them and did not need to. Watching them, Jaime felt the same slide in his gut he had felt when he first saw the wildfire. What comes at you from the old world arrives like a dream you thought you had woken from. He did not pray. He had ached for gods and killed for gods too often to call them now. Not much, but tidy, Bronn said of the fleet. They brought the ones that don't fall apart if a wind sneezes. Soldiers who won't steal until someone tells them to. Look at that. They stand like rocks that learn to walk. Jaime saw them too. Ranks of men with the discipline of a blade laid flat on a table. Unsullied took the piers like a hand closing. A single banner lifted on the lead galley, catching the sunlight in flights of silver. A smaller shape peered over the rail, diminutive even from a distance. It was not a trick of the eye to say the wind seemed to bend toward him. The sea gate was a lion's jaw turned to water. He had swum beneath it with Tyrion once when they were boys and his father was not in residence to forbid it. They had bobbed up in a cavern that smelled of old fish and innuendo, and Jaime had held his brother under until Tyrion bit his wrist and surfaced laughing blood. I didn't know you had salt in you, Tyrion had said, giddy and breathless. I thought you lived on wine and pride. He opened those doors now. The guards stood ready, uneasy in their skin. Ser Forley Prester licked his lips and wiped his palms on his cuisses. They will come through like a knife. They will hold the throat and then the heart. They will come through on terms, Jaime answered softly, as if speaking to a horse that had not decided yet whether to trust. And they will hold what I give them or what they take from me if I falter. We will choose how we lose so that our people do not. Men love a clear order because it lets them be brave without choosing. He gave them that order. He named the inner wards off-limits to all but those he appointed. He commanded the red cloaks to stand down from the walls and to hold the market to keep panics from making torches of the streets. He put Adam in the chapel with 50 to keep the Septon from declaring a holy war in the name of the mother who had watched too many suns break. He sent Bronn with 30 along the ridge above the sea caves, where the rock was treacherous and a misstep would carry a man to a quick quiet. You trust me to keep them from stabbing you in the back? Bronn asked. I trust you to keep anyone who wants to stab me from getting paid for it." "You really do remember me," Bronn said, and went. The black-sailed galley bobbed into the cave's mouth like a thought pushing past a tooth, kissed the stone and did not even scrape. Gangplank laid, boots on wood, boots on stone, a single rhythm as if the sea were a drum and the men were listening for its heart. The first figure to step down was a man whose face had nothing left to pretend with. Grey Worm, Jaime thought, from the rumors. He wore no ornaments and carried a spear that had married his hand. The point turned once in the light, a short, bright smile. Behind him came a woman whose hair fell like a curtain and whose mouth made words better than most men's swords. Missandei of Noth, if Jaime recalled the names in Tyrion's letters that followed him even in sleep. She took in the walls, the men, the fact of the opened gate, and nodded with the piece of a book closed after the last page is read and found to please. Her eyes found Jaime and did not flinch. Her voice, when it came, had the kindness of a blade lowered. "Ser Jaime Lannister," she said, as if she had known him from before there were banners. "You asked for terms and promised that no blood need stain this stone today. Is the promise kept?" "It is." His voice startled him by being steady. "You will offer your mistress word in return. The word of the Queen is that no house, stall, or person in Lannisport shall be harmed. No mine flooded or burned. No woman taken, no man forced into a spear. The word of the Queen is that the garrison and its officers may lay down arms and depart east or north under escort, that provisions will be compensated at fair price, and that any man who chooses to stay and serve peace may do so without oath a second time." "And the word on my brother?" Jaime said, his throat as stiff as his golden wrist. "Say it aloud." Missandei turned to make way. He had not noticed the smaller man at first among the tall, the spare, the relentless. But once he saw him, he could not look away. Tyrion stepped onto the stone of the rock as if he were stepping into an old joke. His hair had more silver threaded with straw than Jaime remembered. His eyes were the same, dark water you could drown in if you wished. He wore a black tunic whose only brightness was a small hand pinned to the breast. He was careful to look at Jaime and not at the gold. "I will speak my own word," Tyrion said, and the way the sound of it filled the cave made Jaime, crazily, want to laugh and then weep. "Cersei's hunters fill every alley that can stand a dwarf. I have worn more hoods than a Septa's laundry. And yet, here I am, the imp who cannot be got rid of. Brother, will you trust me if I say that I have no wish to see your city burn?" "I have trusted you when I ought not to," Jaime replied. "It felt like breathing when I was drowning. That is a good feeling." Tyrion's mouth twitched at its corner. "The Queen accepts your surrender of these gates and this keep in exchange for the amnesty named. She will also accept your sword in her service." "And what do you accept, Tyrion?" "My life," Tyrion said simply, "and the lives that hang from it like bells from a cat's collar." Jaime realized then that the silence in the cave felt different. The men behind him had bowed their heads without knowing it. He stepped forward, letting the light find him. He took off his white cloak and folded it across his arm and set it upon a chest of old ropes as gently as if it were a child. Then he removed his sword. It had not been drawn to cut in months, but it had made decisions for him when he could not. He set it point down on the stone and guided the hilt to Grey Worm's hands. He did not kneel. He did not believe in knees for this. He stood, and that was the oath he had left. "Tell her that I surrender this rock to mercy and necessity," he said. "Tell her that if she proves herself what my brother thinks she is, she will find fewer stones in her road from this land. Tell her that if she is only another of the old stories, then she will still find men willing to die because they are not tired of believing in their names yet. Tell her I am tired." Tyrion looked at him, and something unwound behind his eyes and then rewound into something stronger. He lifted a hand as if to reach for Jaime and then let it fall. "There was a time I would have made a jape," he said. "There are times still if I live. But I think now a man's quiet is a better offering than laughter." Grey Worm took the sword and turned it so the point was toward the floor, a gesture holy without contempt and holy without surrender. "We will not harm," he said, each word a separate stone set carefully. Our queen is not hunger. She is fire and mercy together. The order is already sent to the riders. They will not enter the town. The unsullied flowed like water through the cave and up the long passages. They did not shout. They did not need to. Missandei moved beside them with the authority of someone who had watched kings be small. Tyrion fell into step beside Jaime, as if it were a dance they had learned badly when boys and were now dancing better in a new hall. "You chose the sea gate," Tyrion said. "I wondered if you would remember the one with the lampfish carved above it. Father always said we were not to use it, as if saying it were a charm." "I remember going under with you," Jaime said. "I remember you biting me. I apologize. You tried to drown me first. You were loud." "I have improved," Tyrion said gravely. "I am loud in more languages now." They emerged in the great lower hall where two lions in bas-relief watched each other across a floor of red-veined stone. The hall had been made for feasts, Fo. Are the clatter of platters and the crackle of hearths and the breath of 1,000. Today it held 100, and their silence was more than any shout. Ser Forley Prester stood very straight with his helm on his hip, as if he could make up in posture what he lacked in courage and song. "Lay down your arms," Jaime told him. "You will be paid for your service and escorted with honor. No man here fails in anything by living." Prester blinked, swallowed, and obeyed. The sound of blades meeting stone was a kind of rain. A boy coughed, then laughed, then stopped, and slowly, as if waiting for permission long withheld, the room began to breathe again. Adam came out of the chapel with an expression that had decided to exist in the world as it currently was rather than the world it had been promised. He nodded to Tyrion and then to Missandei and then to Grey Worm, each with the exact same amount of respect, an equation he had balanced in his head while the bells had not rung. Missandei unrolled a parchment. "The Queen commands that a levy be taken of coin from the mines at 1 in 10 for the army's provisions, that wages be paid in full to all men who lay down arms, that all debtors' prisons be opened and their cases reviewed by magistrates chosen from among 3 houses by lot and sworn to equity, and that this place be kept as it is, neither made a dragon's lair nor a throne, but a strong place for food and law." "Law," Tyrion said, "an exotic delicacy. You will find its meat stringy and its bones many. We will find what is there to be found," Missandei answered, unreadable and warm all at once. "There was work. There was so much work that the day wore the look of a man yoked to a cart that no one else had the hands to push." Jaime walked with Tyrion through rooms their father had carved with his will and his purse and his need to be bigger than the cliff that had given him his name. Here was the map room where Tywin had laid armies out in pebbles and the lives on those pebbles like flour dust on his fingers. Here the vault with door thick enough to stop a dragon's tongue, now opened by a key that no one had thought to hide and guarded by men who had spent their strength on anger rather than sleep. "You know she will call you traitor," Tyrion said, not looking at him in the map room. He stood on his toes and moved a pebble 1 thumb's width to the east. "She will send knives, and the men who hold them will fancy themselves as silent as snow. I know. I have taught men who believed it. I have unmade them. And when she speaks your name in the hall, it will be with a kind of wonder. She loved you once. She told me, and meant it. And meant also that she wished you had never been born to interrupt her love of herself." Jaime closed his eyes. The table under his hands felt like his father's shoulder, unyielding not because it was stone but because it believed that yielding was shame. "She loved the thing I let her make of me. I tired of it. That is my treason, perhaps. A better treason than most." Tyrion climbed onto the chair that Tywin had preferred and swung his legs like a boy. "Do you think of the dead? I think of father more than I thought I would, and in a manner I did not expect. I think of the dead when the night is loud. I see them in the mornings when I shave. They shave with me in bad light and nick themselves and bleed on my lips." Jaime smiled so that it would not be taken for a wound. "You killed him." "I did," Tyrion said, as if describing the weather or the shape of a hill. There was a limit to apology. Beyond it, there was only truth. "I do not ask you to forgive it. I have asked myself, and we are at a truce." I had loved him even when he wore his love like a belt that could be taken off and put on the table, Jaime said. I wanted him to look at me and see something other than a sword he owned. When I became his sword, he still smiled as if he paid a fair price. Then the blade cut both ways, Tyrion said. And here we sit in the room where he played gods with pebbles. We have made a bargain for mercy. It is too small for gods, perhaps. It is big for men. They walked the mines at sunset, torches brushing the walls with light. The veins gleamed as if secrets lay there asleep and content to be mined by patient hands. Men with blackened faces looked up and did not know how to strip their expressions of fear fast enough to show respect instead. Jaime raised his gold hand and lowered it, and watched their eyes follow it and then make themselves stop. At the market, the first arguments of the new order were already being had. A fishmonger in a hat as wide as a ship's wanted the levy set after she had sold and not before. A man who sold salt by the palm swore that he had been paid in promises and wanted coin in the presence of witnesses. Missandei knelt to speak to a girl whose mother had been taken for debt and asked questions that drew out answers as if she were drawing water from a well with a rope that knew how to be gentle. You'll be a steward before the week is done, Bronn told Jaime as they watched a Dothraki rider sit his horse on the far side of the market like a statue left by a people no one remembered. There's no money in stewarding unless you ask for it, and then all of it is dirty. I have had dirty money, Jaime said. It buys bread the same as clean. That's the trouble with bread, Bronn said. It forgives. At twilight the dragon came. It did not land. It circled once, twice, black against rose and violet, the sun painting its belly copper. The sound it made was not a roar so much as a reminder that there were voices older than men and mountains. People in the market looked up all at once and their mouths opened as if they had rehearsed it. The dragon's shadow crossed the inner ward and the gold in the veins within the cliff flared as if answering. It did not spit fire. It did not need to. Tyrion watched it with a look that belonged to a boy who had discovered that books could bleed. He remembers me, he said softly. Or I think he does. Dragons remember what they want. What do you call him? Jaime asked, as if asking a name would help him own his breath. Drogon, Tyrion said, and smiled like a man thinking of a friend who had given him a scare and then forgiven him for it. He likes it when you do not run. I have practice. Being too proud to run is not the same as standing. Tyrion's smile grew and thinned. Still, I will not advise you to practice otherwise. Letters arrived and went. Some were from lords of the West who did not know whether to send their sons or their secrets. Some were from mothers whose sons were secrets and who wanted coin to keep them such. One came on pure white parchment without seal. It smelled faintly of juniper and ash. The script was clean enough to cut. You have left me, it read, without greeting, as if I were a chamber you had done with. You mistake yourself for a door. You mistake yourself for a man. Remember what we were and know that I remember more. The city hangs on threads I hold in my teeth and I will not let my tongue rest. When I am done, your name will be a taste I spit into the brazier where the old gods burned and we warmed our hands. Bring back the rock if you love me, or stay, and love will be the name I take away from you. He read it twice. He did not show it to Tyrion. He did not burn it. He slipped it into a niche in the wall where as a boy he had kept a piece of beach glass that had felt like a jewel. That night he walked the parapets. The moon hung low and fat and yellow, a coin in a beggar's eye. The sea did what it had always done, making desire into weather. Lannisport slept the sleep of a town that expected to wake. Below, in the court, unsullied shared bread with red cloaks as if breaking a loaf could teach hands to find each other's fingers without knives between them. Bronn snored in the shadow of a lion carved before Jaime's great-grandfather had been anything but a rumor. Adam Marbrand wrote a letter to a cousin he trusted only with the sort of trust a man uses when a bridge is the only way across. Tyrion joined him without announcing himself. Jaime knew his gait in the way you know the descent of your own lungs. He offered him a skin of water and Tyrion took a pull that left a half-moon on the leather. I will go east again soon, Tyrion said. There are pieces to this game that cannot be moved from here. You came for this, Jaime said. I came for you, Tyrion corrected, and then let his eyes, old and wicked and remade, soften. I came for the chance to stand with you on our father's stone and not feel small. I feel small, Jaime said, smaller than I have ever felt. Feels like relief. Perhaps that is what men mean when they tell us to be humble, Tyrion said, and the word put on a different coat while they listened to it. Perhaps it is not a command to bend, but a permission to set down what we cannot carry and go on without it. They stood in quiet. The dragon passed once over the sea again, low enough that the tips of its wings stitched the surface into two different waters. Jaime felt the wind of it lift his hair and set it down again. He thought of his sister as a girl in the garden behind Casterly Hall, with a ribbon in her hair and dirt beneath her nails from the rosebush she had torn up because it had pricked her. He thought of his father waking before dawn to look out at the same water and tell himself that he was greater than it because he had learned to lie to it in the form of ships. He thought of the boy he had been, with a lantern between his teeth and terror like sugar. He thought of the man he had become, with gold where flesh had been and something at last in him that did not want to be treasured. When I was a boy, he said, not to anyone and not to the night, I believed the rock was a god that had decided to be loyal to us. It protected us because we were clever and brave and good. I do not believe that anymore. It is a thing of stone. It does not love us. It will not weep if we do not live in it. It will keep the shape of our footsteps longer than the shape of our names, Tyrion said. That is its only favor. And what is ours then? Jaime asked. Tyrion did not answer at once. He leaned on the parapet, short legs not reaching the step. He stretched and let them reach anyway. We can decide, he said finally, that the shape we leave is one that would make a boy walking in the dark with a lantern bite his brother less. We can decide we will not drown each other to hear the splash. Jaime laughed, and the sound went out over the water and came back to him with sea on it. He thought of the letter he had not burned. He thought of the city with its wound still glowing. He thought of the men asleep in the court, swords put away not because they trusted but because they had grown tired. He thought and did not decide anything more that night. He did not need to. The rock had been given into new hands. The work would meet the morning with its boots on. The choice had been made under a sky that knew how to outlast even the fiercest oath. For once he had not made it with a blade. Before the dawn, long before the bells of the fish market began to be rung by men who still miscounted because they had been soldiers yesterday, a raven stirred at the window of the solar and shook out feathers that gleamed like oil. Jaime took up a quill. He had not written to Cersei because he had not known a word that would not be eaten by the air before it reached her. Now he wrote, since the habit of it was old and obstinate. Sister, I have given our father's rock to the only mercy we could afford. If you are wise, you will find a way to share this mercy without calling it a wound to your pride. If you send men, they will bleed and make liars of the stones we were children upon. If you send knives, they will find me. If they find me, I will show them the place where the sea and the cliff meet, and they will choose which is the kinder to fall from. If you call me traitor, I will answer with our mother's name. If you call me coward, I will answer with our father's. If you call me brother, I will answer as I can. I know what you are. I know what I have been. I have chosen to be less. It is not the worst thing I have done. He did not send that letter either. The raven cocked its head in offense at being denied its purpose. Jaime crumpled the parchment, then smoothed it, then crumpled it again. He set it with the other in the niche that had once held a shard of beach glass. The niche accepted it with the indifference of stone. When morning came, it brought the smell of bread and fish and men who meant to live. Unsullied took their stations with the quiet of water finding a lower place. The red cloaks, unarmed and a little surprised at their continued breathing, began to argue about whether they liked the taste of Nothy spiced tea. Miners slipped their baskets into the shafts as if nothing had changed and everything had. In the market, a child released a kite that turned from crimson to black as the sun found its threads. Jaime walked down among them. He felt the gold on his wrist as he might have felt a scar that did not ache and yet would always be there to be read by anyone who knew the language of wounds. Tyrion waited for him by the sea gate, looking out at the water as if reading a book whose pages could not be turned but only remembered. "Where now?" Jaime asked. "North," Tyrion said. "There are rumors old as snow. There is a different kind of fire. The Queen would have allies who care more about living than about how they are named while they do it." "And you would have me?" Tyrion's smile was small and, for once, without edges. "I would have my brother. The rock can stand without you. So can I. I do not know if I want to." Jaime looked back at the walls, the lions, the faces that had carved themselves into the stone by looking at it long enough to imagine they had left a mark. He looked at the sea and at the sky that wore the dragon as lightly as a gull. He set his hand, his gold hand, on the gate's iron and let the cool of it tell him that it was real and that he was awake. "Not today," he said. "Today I stay and help them count wheat and shame and coin. Tomorrow we can see if I am a man who remembers how to ride a road north for more than the sake of a banner. I would like to find out what shape I am when I am no one's sword." "And no one's king," Tyrion said. He closed his eyes, and the dark did not feel like the inside of a tomb but the inside of a hand cupped around a flame to keep it from going out.